And now it is great news for the family and supporters of former Ivorian leader Laurent Gbagbo. After spending over 7 years in the custody of the International Criminal Court, ICC, in The Hague, he has been acquitted, that is, Laurent Gbagbo has been acquitted and set free of crimes against humanity. The crimes were in connection to the 2010 election that left around 3,000 people dead and over 500,000 people displaced. Now, the reactions to the news have been huge, with celebrations beginning first from The Hague, where some of his supporters had gathered for that ruling yesterday. And there's been also a lot of discussions on what his release mean for Cote d'Ivoire, for Ivory Coast politics, especially as the country goes to general elections in 2020. We will be talking about all of this in a moment, but let's take some of the reactions, immediate reactions. We begin with Raymond Kudu KC, we spoke with yesterday on the show, and just shortly after the ruling and setting Laurent Gbagbo free, we spoke to him again to hear his immediate reaction, and also another pro-Gbagbo activist, Irene Guhuru Oregon. And let's take a listen to the two of them now.
There is a lot of noise. It is much joy here. I told you a few days ago that there is optimism in this decision, and I was optimistic. And the immediate release of the illustrious son of Ivory Coast has been witnessed. Mr. Gbagbo and his minister, this fills me with joy. I'm happy, I'm full of joy. Now other steps must be taken within Ivory Coast. With Gbagbo free, we'll move on to the phase of national reconciliation. A phase of release and relief for the country. As a joke, I would say that I am far from being a fakir. I am not yet reading a crystal ball, but knowing the Ivorians, we are not aggressive by nature. Something indeed fell on us. We did not expect it. President Gbagbo is indeed a catalyst. His release will make things better than his detention. When he says one word, I get healed. And I think that he will say only one word, and Ivory Coast will be healed. It is not a show of pretense. I'm not just saying it. We have seen the mobilization hardly doubt these 8 years. I am convinced that this is a factor that can contribute to the peace and stability of the Ivory Coast, and I believe that I'm convinced, and I believe others are as well convinced.
Qui peut apporter à la paix et à la stabilité de la Côte d'Ivoire. Moi, j'en suis convaincu. J'en suis convaincu. Je pense que j'en suis convaincu avec une bonne frange de la population ivoirienne. Voilà.
Wow. Well, judges at the court said that prosecutors had failed to prove Gbagbo's guilt, nor that of his co-accused Charles Blé Goudé, a former minister in the country. Gbagbo had been charged for committing crimes against humanity during the 2010 post-election violence in Cote d'Ivoire. The former leader follows in the footsteps of his wife, Simone Gbagbo, who walked away from a 20-year jail term in Ivory Coast in August last year when she was granted amnesty by the Ouattara administration after 7 years in prison.
The wife of former Ivorian leader Laurent Gbagbo, Simone Gbagbo, said her husband should never have gone to the International Criminal Court and held the judges who acquitted him of all war crimes charges on Tuesday. Simone celebrated at her Abidjan home with dozens of supporters. Joy. It is joy, because justice has been re-established. These men had no reason to end up at the ICC. It was a great injustice against them. It was cruel. Today, the 3 judges had the courage to reinstate the truth. The truth has been restored, and I'm joyful. Elsewhere in Abidjan, Gbagbo supporters watched the live coverage of ICC proceedings in The Hague and erupted in celebration after the court announced his acquittal and ordered his immediate release.
Now that they've freed Gbagbo, I realize God exists. When I look at Gbagbo's struggle, I feel proud, and I realize that God exists. Gbagbo represents Jesus Christ in Africa. Gbagbo gave his party to the whole of Africa. Really, I am happy. I am happy about Gbagbo being freed, and I thank God.
Gbagbo faced 4 counts of crimes against humanity, including murder, rape and persecution, committed during a post-election standoff in 2011 when he refused to hand over power to rival Alassane Ouattara.
Well, joining us to talk about Laurent Gbagbo's acquittal is Africanews journalist from Cote d'Ivoire, Ruth Lago. Very good to see you, Ruth, this morning.
Moi aussi, très heureuse de te retrouver.
Right, good to see you too. Jerry, how are you?
Merci. Bonjour, Jerry.
Yes. So, big news in Cote d'Ivoire it is.
Of course.
Exactement.
Right? Exactement. So you come from Cote d'Ivoire, and obviously this news in a way has had an impact on you, just like it has had on other Ivorians. But what is the reaction on the ground, especially from supporters of Laurent Gbagbo?
Et tout à fait, Lidette, il faut dire que cette décision de la CPI arrive à peine un mois après une rumeur.
It must be said that this decision of the ICC comes barely a month after rumors about Laurent Gbagbo's release. This rumor has thrown his supporters into the streets before being denied days later. Well, this decision of January 15th, as we saw and heard earlier, has been very well received by the pro-Gbagbo, with these scenes of joy observed in some areas of Abidjan. The Ivorians had been waiting for this release for years, but I nevertheless noted a little restraint and misunderstanding resulting from the prosecutor's position, which has not yet been pronounced, and his ability to appeal or not. And then I also thought about the situation of the FBI. You probably know that the Ivorian Popular Front, Laurent Gbagbo's party, is divided. The secretary of the wing that was described as a radical had passed away, Abdurrahmani Sangari. Between him and Pascal Afengusan, the current was no longer flowing. Simon Gbagbo's release did not change much, so we do not exclude the fact that upon his return to the country, Laurent Gbagbo tries to unite his supporters. Will he do and present himself at the next elections? Nothing is less certain. Laurent Gbagbo will become more of an observer of the 2020 election than an actor. In his book co-written with the journalist Francois, Mati Gbagbo dreams of himself in position.
And secondly, as a journalist that you are, you followed the post-election crisis, you know, the trial, the hearings and all of this. And from what you've seen so far, I mean, do you think that now that Laurent Gbagbo is free, it will strengthen his partisan bloc for a revenge mission, or do you think it will be one of reconciliation?
Jerry,
Jerry, more clearly, the acquittal of the 2 defendants will bring about genuine reconciliation in Cote d'Ivoire. I would say yes, and then no. Yes, because this release of Laurent Gbagbo and his minister somehow solves the justice of victory denounced by the pro-Gbagbo since the end of this electoral crisis. And I would say since the beginning of the war in 2002, when the perpetrators of the crimes were pardoned before the ICC episode. And not because it would mean that there is no guilt or responsible, or no one responsible in this 2010 electoral crisis, which killed at least 3,000 people according to the UN. On both sides, whether you are a pro-Gbagbo or a pro-Ouattara, I believe that we all need fair justice, and that is the point. The Abidjan authorities have confidence in the judiciary, but it leaves many observers rather confused. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission may have to resume its functions to partially erase, I would say, the atrocities experienced by the vast majority of Ivorians. The victims of this war comes from both sides, and for true reconciliation, the Ivorians certainly need fair justice, which is very imperative.
Well, Ruth, what is the future of the FPI political party in the elections of 2020? Henry Konar Bedia speaks of a possible alliance, and Kofi Ngesan was in his stronghold of Dukuro to discuss a PDC-FPI alliance 1 year to the elections in the country. But what do you make of this?
Le futur du FPI en ce moment, il faut dire que c'est la troisième force politique du pays.
The FPI is currently the third largest political force in the country, and this party failed in the last municipal and legislative elections, I should say. So on the political scene, the Ivorian Popular Front no longer represents this political force of yesteryears, but the situation could change. First, the division within the RHDP, and especially with the announced return of Laurent Gbagbo. Henry Kanombedi and his former ally now look at each other with eyes of failure. The divorce has been consummated. Now, the former president is now thinking rally. Also, the return of the REIT's president remains popular in Cote d'Ivoire, as I said earlier, and his presence could galvanize his many supporters. And then this possible alliance mentioned by former President Henry Kanombedi with his platform of opposition parties could give the advantage to this coalition if, of course, the terms of alliance, if it is effective, are accepted by all. Bedi does not exclude running. Soro, who takes note of this platform, is likely candidate, as well as Afi Ingesan also. And will Laurent Gbagbo be inclined to join forces with all these mentioned above? In other words, uncertainty will dominate Ivorian political life in the coming months. But one thing is certain, the arrival of Gbagbo certainly gives a new image to the Ivorian opposition and could reshuffle the cast for the next presidential election. And that is really for certain.
Pour le visage de l'opposition en Côte d'Ivoire.
Well, thank you very much, Ruth, for joining us in the program today and for just giving us your thoughts regarding this news of the release of Laurent Gbagbo.
Merci. Et toi aussi.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insights.
Merci.